You are looking at a driveway that hasn't seen a single weed in 365 days. No poison ivy, no thistle, not even a blade of grass. The secret isn't a professional herbicide. It's something you already have in your kitchen. A retired farmer and his daughter Cornbread tested 4 methods, and one of them left the gravel bare for an entire year. But here is the catch. Use it near a tree and you'll kill that too. We spent 3 days with a retired farmer and his daughter Cornbread as they tested 4 weed-killing methods on their property, from a 50-cent solution to a spray that sterilizes soil for a year. What they found will change how you fight weeds forever. It starts with the cheapest option, and the first ingredient is already sitting in your pantry. David has been working this land since before most of us were born. His daughter Cornbread, real name Mackenzie, but nobody calls her that, has been mixing sprayers alongside him since she could walk. Together, they have battled every weed that Southeast Texas can throw at a fence line. Torpedo grass that laughs at store-bought sprays, briars thick enough to stop a mower, and a vine that climbs 12 feet in a single week. So, when David told me they had tested 4 weed-killing methods head-to-head, and that one of them kept his gravel drive completely bare for a full year, I needed to see it for myself. What they showed me in those 3 days changed how I think about every bottle of herbicide on the shelf. Because the 4 solutions they tested do not just kill weeds differently, they attack the soil differently. And if you pick the wrong one for the job, you will not just fail to kill the weeds, you will create a dead zone where nothing grows for 5 years. The difference comes down to a single ingredient most people ignore. That ingredient is not in the weed killer. It is in your kitchen sink. Liquid dish soap. The blue stuff you use to cut grease off a frying pan is the difference between a spray that beads up and rolls off a waxy leaf and a spray that soaks into the plant and destroys it from the inside. David calls it a surfactant. Cornbread just calls it the sticky stuff. Without it, you are wasting your vinegar. The first test started with a gallon of 30% horticultural vinegar, not the 5% you put on a salad. This stuff is 6 times stronger, acidic enough to burn your skin on contact. David poured it into a pump sprayer, added a healthy squirt of dish soap, shook it hard, and walked me over to a patch of young broadleaf weeds pushing through the gravel. He sprayed until the leaves glistened, then stopped. By morning, he said, "Those leaves will be brown and crispy," and they were. The vinegar had destroyed every cell it touched, the soap carrying the acid straight through the plant's natural defenses. But there was a catch, and David pointed it out before the spray had even dried. The root is still alive. Vinegar is a contact killer. It does not travel down into the root system the way commercial herbicides do. So, if the plant has any stored energy underground, it will put up new leaves within a week. You have to spray it again and again until the root starves. For a driveway crack, that might be fine. For a fence line of torpedo grass, it is a losing battle. So David unscrewed the sprayer and dumped in a cup of plain table salt, just standard white salt from a round cardboard container. Salt is a desiccant. It pulls water out of plant tissue and, more importantly, out of the soil itself. When you mix salt into your vinegar spray and saturate the ground around a weed, you are not just burning the leaves, you are salting the earth. David used the exact phrase, salting the earth. He was serious. He warned that this mixture would leave a patch of ground sterile for about 30 days. Nothing would sprout. No grass, no clover, no dandelions. And if you accidentally spray the roots of a nearby tree or your wife's rose bush, you will kill that too. He walked carefully along a gravel path where nothing valuable grew and sprayed a test strip. The vinegar would do the immediate damage. The salt would linger in the soil and prevent any seeds from germinating. For a driveway or a sidewalk crack, it is perfect. But he looked me hard in the eye when he said it. Never use this in your garden beds. The salt does not break down. It accumulates. The Romans destroyed the fields of Carthage with salt, and nothing grows there to this day. That might be a myth, but the science behind it is real. Then David put down the sprayer and walked into his barn. When he came back out, he was carrying a white jug with a label cornbread had written on with a black marker, RM18. This is where it stops being a kitchen experiment and starts being professional chemistry. RM18 is a combination herbicide. It contains glyphosate, the most widely used systemic weed killer on the planet, but it also contains a second chemical called diquat. The glyphosate travels slowly through the plant, creeping down into the root over several days, blocking an enzyme the plant needs to grow. It delivers a full root kill. The diquat does something completely different. It is a contact herbicide that inhibits photosynthesis. It burns the foliage within hours, turning green leaves to brown mush in a single afternoon. Together, they give you the instant visual death of a burn down and the long-term root destruction of a systemic. David poured the RM18 into his backpack sprayer, added a commercial surfactant instead of dish soap, and walked straight toward the thickest patch of torpedo grass I had ever seen. Grass that had been mocking every weed eater he owned for 2 summers. The grass was waist-high, thick as rope. He switched on the battery-powered sprayer, and a fine mist settled over the whole patch. He did not spray the leaves. He painted them, and while we watched, he said the words I will not forget. In 3 days, this whole patch will be dead. Not just brown, dead. And it will stay dead until something new blows in from the neighbor's field. But what he pulled from the barn next made RM18 look like a garden hose. What he pulled from the barn next was a jug labeled RM43, Total Vegetation Control. David handled it like it was a live grenade. He pulled on gloves, checked the wind direction 3 times, and told Cornbread to move the dog inside. Then he explained what makes this stuff different from everything else we had seen. RM43 is a soil sterilizer. It does not just kill weeds. It prevents anything from growing for up to 1 year. The active ingredients are glyphosate and a chemical called imazapyr. The glyphosate does the immediate killing, traveling down into the roots like we saw with RM18. But the imazapyr stays in the soil. It creates a barrier that stops seeds from germinating and kills any root that tries to push through it. Once you spray this on a gravel driveway or a fence line, that ground goes barren. Not for a month. For a full turn of the seasons, David pointed to a patch of gravel near his gate. He had sprayed it with RM43 the previous spring. Nearly 12 months later, that patch was still bare dirt. Not a single blade of grass, not a single weed. It looked like someone had scraped the earth down to mineral and kept it that way. No water, no fertilizer, no sunlight could bring that ground back until the chemical finally broke down. He walked me to the edge of that dead zone and knelt. At the boundary line, you could see exactly where the spray had stopped. On one side, nothing. On the other side, a thick tangle of weeds and grass growing with exactly the same sunlight, exactly the same rain. A razor-sharp line between life and sterile ground. He said he had measured it with a tape. The spray had not drifted an inch beyond where he intended, because he had sprayed it on a windless morning, used a low-pressure nozzle, and kept the wand close to the ground. Drift from RM43, he warned, could kill a neighbor's garden 70 feet away. Then he told me something I did not expect. He said he rarely uses it, only on the gravel drive, only on the fence lines where no tree roots run underneath, because imazapyr can be absorbed through the soil and pulled up by tree roots you cannot see. You could spray your driveway, and a 100-year-old oak 30 feet away could start dying slowly over the course of a summer, and you would never connect the two. By the time the leaves curl, the damage is done. The tree cannot be saved. Cornbread came back out with a bandana tied around her face like an outlaw. She had heard enough horror stories about careless spraying to take no chances. She helped David mix the RM-43 at the recommended ratio, pouring the concentrated liquid into water, then adding a commercial surfactant to help it stick. David pumped the backpack sprayer, adjusted the nozzle to a fan pattern, and began working the fence line behind the barn. The spray fell in a fine, controlled sheet. He did not broadcast it. He painted the target. Every weed in that strip would be dead within days, and no new weed would replace it for a year. But the real test was not what happened during the spraying. It was what happened after. David and Cornbread promised me that in 3 days we would walk the property together and inspect the results of every method they had shown me. The vinegar alone, the vinegar with salt, the RM-18 and the RM-43. 4 approaches, 4 different fates for the soil beneath them. And when we came back, the differences were not just visible. They were a warning about what happens when you treat every weed the same way. 3 days later, the property told the whole story. We started at the vineyard-only patch. The leaves were brown and curled, exactly as David had predicted. But when he bent down and pulled a weed from the dirt, the root came up white and wet, still alive. New shoots were already pushing from the crown, tiny green points that would be full leaves in another week. Vinegar had burned the armor off, but it had never touched the soldier underground. We walked 20 yards to the vinegar and salt test strip. The difference was immediate. Every weed was dead, and the soil itself looked wrong. Pale, crusty, almost dusty. Nothing had sprouted. No new grass, no clover, no weeds. David scraped the surface with his boot. The top half-inch was essentially salted earth. This area would stay barren for a month, maybe longer if it did not rain enough to flush the salt down. For a gravel path, that was perfect. For a garden bed, it would be a disaster. Then we came to the torpedo grass patch David had painted with RM-18. I stopped walking. The entire waist-high thicket was collapsed, brown and desiccated, like a hayfield after a drought. He grabbed a stalk and pulled. The whole plant came out of the ground with a soft tearing sound, root and all. The diquat had torched the foliage within hours, and the glyphosate had spent the next 3 days creeping down into every runner and rhizome, shutting down the plant's ability to grow until it starved. This grass had survived 2 summers of mowing, weed-eating, and cursing, but it was dead now, fully and finally. He tossed the root onto the gravel and smiled. Finally, we reached the fence line, where he had applied the RM-43. It was not just dead, it was sterilized. A solid strip of bare mineral dirt ran the length of the fence, as if someone had salted the earth with a surgeon's precision. At the edge, the grass was lush, emerald green, and healthy. 6 inches away, nothing. No weeds, no grass, not a single volunteer. He knelt and pointed to a faint white residue on the soil surface, the remnants of the imazapyr barrier. This was the patch he had sprayed nearly a year earlier. It was still barren, still waiting for the chemical bonds to break down enough to allow life again. 12 months of total vegetation control from a single application. David stood up and looked at the 4 test zones, arranged almost like a science fair project. Cheap vinegar and soap will knock back small annual weeds, he said, but you will be spraying them every week. Add salt, and you buy yourself a month of bare ground, but only where nothing valuable grows. RM18 will kill what you spray, root and stem, and keep it dead until seeds blow in from somewhere else. And RM43, he tapped the jug, will own that patch of dirt for a full year, but only use it where you never want anything to grow again. He repeated the warning about tree roots, about drift, about the neighbor's tomatoes 70 feet away. Respect the chemistry, or it will respect nothing. He pulled off his gloves and gave a look that had nothing to do with farming. It was the look of a man who has seen what happens when people skip the label and spray like they are washing a car. What we are about to show you next is not a warning, it is a blessing, because when you understand these 4 methods, you are no longer spraying blind. You are making a choice. Cheap vinegar and soap for the small stuff you can hit every week. Vinegar and salt for the path where nothing should grow for a month. RM18 for the deep-rooted grass that has mocked you for years. And RM43 for the gravel driveway that you want to stay bare until the leaves turn next autumn. David and Cornbread did not give us a magic bullet. They gave us a map. The only question left is what kind of ground you are standing on and what you are willing to lose if you choose wrong. If this knowledge landed, if something in your gut tells you that practical, no-nonsense wisdom like this is getting harder to find, then you are exactly the person we built the offer for. There is a link in the first pinned comment below this video. It will take you to something I think you will want to see. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and leave us a comment. Which method are you trying first? Cornbread reads every single one, and she promised me she would reply until her fingers give out. God bless you, and we will see you in the next one.